so grateful to have the opportunity to stand here and speak to you today like this, because it is a place of honor that Maureen has given me to speak into your space, into your hearts, into your mind, to share whatever, Spirit has guided me to share. And so what I'll be talking about is divine order. But it's divine order on the inside, because what I've been doing for the last 10 years as a professional organizer is helping people to deal with the disorder on the outside. But what I realized a few years into it was that it would just revert back to its state unless you really dealt with the cause, the root cause of what was what was creating the clutter in the first place. And so it was a very interesting journey, kind of winding and twisting and turning to find the energetic forces behind what creates that disorder outside, and then what it takes to clear it up on the inside and make it stick. So when I was preparing my talk, I came up with maybe 3 talks worth of material. But so this is part 1 of what could be a trilogy, but might not be, but who knows? But I'm really grateful for this community, and I'm really grateful for Maureen, because Maureen, when she was the Director of Youth and Family at Bodie, where you spent many years together, she was responsible for creating a spiritual foundation for my children, for especially my 2 older ones, because Imani hadn't come along yet. And she gave them access to a higher power just through her presence. And so I am incredibly grateful for Maureen, and I've been cheering her on from the sidelines, like, go Maureen, go, as she was doing this. And so she's inspired me to step up and step out, because I don't necessarily feel comfortable. I'm comfortable, but I've been holding myself back for a really long time of just putting myself out and sharing. I'm really good one-on-one and in small groups, but to actually say to the world, this is who I am, this is what I represent, this is what I believe, is a big step forward. So thank you for just being here. So a little bit about myself. I'm the youngest of 4 kids. And I am coming from the 3rd generation of women that have actually done this. My grandmother and my mother were traveling evangelists, and they spread and preached the word of God, which is unusual for women of color in the South. My grandmother was doing it in Tennessee. My mom did it through Georgia and Alabama. Even though I was born here in Chicago, we did go back out south, and Florida and places like that. And my brothers and sisters and I were like her backup singers. So, my mother would sing. She had this beautiful, booming, loud voice. And she would just come, and people would be in tears. And she also had healing gifts where she would, the Christian tradition says she would lay on hands. So she would lay hands on people and they would get well. And this is the environment that I grew up in. This was part of my foundation. And part of that, and part of my mother's mission and what she gave to me, was also this fierce determination. Because, she was, when it was part of her ministry to share, she was dependent on the gifts and offerings of the people that listened to her talk and the people that she healed. And that lent to a financial situation for a single mom with 4 kids of really not having a whole lot of things materially. So we were not wealthy. My mother traveled quite a bit, and we was very indigent, and we were just it was not a stable environment to grow up in as a child. And so as I took my own journey to find divine order within myself, I actually had to go back to the foundation. I had to go back to my roots. Dr. Joyce Meyer says, consider a tree for a moment. As beautiful as trees are to look at, we don't see what goes on underground as they grow roots. Trees must develop deep roots in order to grow strong and produce their beauty. But we don't see the roots. We just see and enjoy the beauty. In much the same way, that is what goes on inside of us, like the roots of a tree. So what happens when you're wanting to produce divine order in your life? You have to go to your root system. You have to look and see what's there. And oftentimes we're held back from really exploring that root system because there's pain and disappointment and upset that can be there, whether it was produced by another or whether you were the one who created some of the hurt or pain. Spiritual practice is the act of putting your awareness and focus on the root system of your being. It's doing the work to examine and sort through all the components that make up our human experience on this earth. So when I think about what I experienced with my mother and watching her struggle financially, but also struggle to find love and connection, it allowed me to, my mother passed away in 2014, and what's been opening up since she passed away was this ability to step outside of the petty complaints that I had about her, gripes that we sometimes project onto our parents. I was able to step outside of that and really see her as the woman that she was and what she role modeled for me. And as I was preparing this talk, I remembered this poem by Langston Hughes, and it's called Mother to Son, and it says, well, son, I tell you, life for me ain't been no crystal stair. It had tacks in it, and splinters, and boards torn up, and places with no carpet on the floor, bare. But all the time I's been climbing on and reaching landings and turning corners, and sometimes going in the dark where there ain't been no light. So boy, don't you turn back. Don't you sit down on the steps because you find it's kind of hard. Don't you fall now, for I's still going, honey. I still climbing, and life for me ain't been no crystal stair. And so I was able to find some gratitude for my mother because her life was not a crystal stair. She had her children young. She didn't have a solid support system. And yet, here we stand, my brothers and sisters and I, representatives of the faith and the heart that she put in. And I had to own that as part of my root system. So what does human experience look like when there's a healthy root system in place? It looks like your basic survival needs are met gracefully and with ease, kind of like that, what Kathy was singing about earlier, right? A roof over her head. Life is experienced as welcoming, and you feel as though life is for you rather than against you. You also have a sense of belonging, of feeling wanted, of being a part of a community, and feeling worthy and worthwhile. So when you look at your life, as you examine your root system, do you feel worthy? Do you feel worthwhile? At what point did you learn that you weren't, or you decided that you weren't, right? This is the examination process that can give you a solid foundation. The spiritual practice I'm inviting you to take on to create order and harmony in your foundation comes from the philosophy of 12-step, to do a searching and fearless inventory. Drill down into the roots of what makes you the person you see in the mirror every day. And the reason the word fearless is used because it is fear that keeps us from persevering in the face of the discomfort. It's kind of like the small print of transformation. It's like you want to transform your life, you want to live your best life, you want to grow and develop, but sometimes you hit a wall of that discomfort that comes from feeling the feelings that you've tucked away because they were too overwhelming in the moment. Having to face the fact that you failed miserably, big time, at something, or that you let someone down, or that someone's sitting on a psychiatrist's chair because of you, right? Okay, so that's your foundation. If you understand chakras, that's your root chakra, right? The second place is the seat of your vitality. Okay. I left home when I was 18. I was the youngest, and my mom was pretty much ready to be an empty nester, so she drove me up here to Chicago. I went to Columbia College, and I stayed in the dorms downtown. And I remember when it was time for me to, time for her to leave my dorm room and leave me here, I knew that I wasn't going back. I wasn't going back home. And ever, if I had it at my choice, right? But I lived on the dorms the first year, and then the second year I had a little tiny studio apartment on the north side of Chicago near Loyola University. And it was sink or swim time. This was 1996, and I remember that first night being in my apartment, kind of curled up on the floor because I didn't have a bed yet, and curled up realizing that, holy crap, I'm on my own. Like, I'm here, I'm doing this. I don't, going back home wasn't an option. But I had, at that point, even though I had a deep spiritual foundation in Christianity, I had started to explore Eastern philosophies as well, and meditation and Buddhism. During this time, Oprah was really getting her Live Your Best Life off the ground, and there was so many other spiritual teachers and tools that I was exposed to. And so I realized that my thoughts created my reality, that I could actually, live my best life on my own. I was going to trust myself. I was going to trust God. I was going to trust the process. And so, but ultimately I had to go with my gut, right? Because I didn't know what I didn't know. Your gut is the seat of your vitality in so many ways. Energetically, it's the center of consciousness that houses your creativity, your joy of being alive, your emotions, your desire, your sexuality, your sensuality, your feeling, and your pleasure. This is all coming from your seat of vitality. And so in their book, The Good Gut, Justin and Erica Sonnenberg say that a primal connection exists between our brain and our gut. We often talk about a gut feeling. When we meet someone for the first time, we're told to trust our gut instinct. When making a difficult decision, or that it's gut check time, when faced with a situation that tests our nerve and our determination. But this mind-gut connection is not just metaphorical. Our brain and our gut are connected by an extensive network of neurons and a highway of chemicals and hormones that constantly provide feedback about how hungry we are or whether or not we're experiencing stress. So going with your gut is not a metaphorical thing. There's a lot of information there. And so when you're looking to bring order in your life, you actually have to trust your instincts. Now, intuition, of course, is another higher order of this conversation, but oftentimes when our lives are calling for some order, you've got to get down deep in your belly and sort it out and figure out what's in there, because that second chakra energy in your gut is dealing with money, sex, power. It's all of the pleasure or lack thereof that you want in your life. You have to clear these things out in order to have full access. The symptoms of disorder in your vitality center show up as avoiding, controlling, or ignoring your feelings, whether they're your emotional feelings or your physical feelings, being disconnected from your sensuality or sexuality, living in your head, neglecting to take care of your body temple, and pushing it beyond its limits, but also a loss of spontaneity, pleasure, and joy. Okay? To have divine order inside and out requires you to feel good in your skin. This happens when you trust yourself and you trust the universe implicitly in the creation and the unfolding of your life. It takes listening to and following through with your creative impulses and being committed to not just enduring or overcoming life's challenges, but to drink from a cup of plenty of experience and experiencing life in a way that expresses our divine nature. And that divine nature is one that's of abundance, generosity, prosperity, and flow. So Steve Jobs said, "You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in the future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. This approach has never let me down, and it has made all of the difference in my life." And that's what Steve Jobs said. So that's a pretty good endorsement for trusting your gut. I, at 18, 19 years old, had to trust that I had everything that I needed in order to fulfill on living the best life that I could live for myself. The spiritual practice I invite you to take on to bring order into this center of your life is to play. To play, to have fun, to dance, to engage in your creative passions, whatever they are. To be present for your meals so that all of your senses are engaged, the sight, the smell, the taste, the texture, and listening and trusting your gut. Order in your sovereignty, which is your power center. This is the third chakra. And when this showed up for me, I was living on my own for about a year, and I wasn't looking for a relationship. If there was anybody in the room for the story I told at VoiceBox, I know you were there. I had been partying and hanging out and being a typical college student, but realizing that, wait a minute, hold on, you can't party too hard because you got work to do. So I pulled back and I said, I'm just gonna focus on work, school, and just handling my business. So I wasn't looking for a relationship. And then this guy came along. And it was a very swift courtship. But what was really clear was that we had, that in my relationship with him, he actually accepted me for being me, and just, he didn't want to change me. We didn't want to change each other. There was, he had a great deal of respect for me, and I felt that, and I knew that, and I didn't feel like I had to have my aspirations and dreams take a back seat in order to be in a relationship with him. I didn't have to lose myself, which was really important for, you know, a young 20-something woman. But when he asked me to marry him, I said yes. And I said yes from a place of certainty and power that was right in the center of my being. And I never, ever second-guessed that. And it's paid wonderful dividends. Emperor Haile Selassie said, "We must become bigger than we have been, more courageous, greater in spirit, larger in outlook. We must become members of a new race, overcoming petty prejudice, owing our ultimate allegiance not to nations, but to our fellow men within the human community." And what that calls for is really recognizing that you're you're connected with something greater. Yes, you have your personal power, and your personal power exists within a broader structure that's closer to you. It doesn't have to do with a national identity. It's really within your community. And that's a beautiful opportunity to stand in your power. Sovereignty is at the center of your power and strength. It is in when it is in divine order, it looks like, and this is what's interesting about this, as I really kind of reviewed what I knew about sovereignty and about the third chakra power center, is that we say power, but what it looks like when it's in order, it looks like serenity. It looks like gentleness. It looks like patience. It looks like being independent of the good opinions of others, appreciation and respect for the needs and desires of others, being accountable to ourselves and to others, taking a stand and living according to your core values and your declared ethics. It also looks like self-reliance, good concentration, focused intention, and confidence. But a conversation about order in your power center can't be had without addressing the difference between power and control. Your personal sovereignty gets shut down when you make an agreement that someone else is more powerful than you are. The truth of the matter is there's just one power, and that we all have access to it. So you actually don't have to give it away to someone else. And when you do that, you open yourself up to being controlled. This is how bullies and abusers proliferate. Because those in the hostile environments created by these people are complicit in relinquishing their personal power to this other individual. There is a physical response to the imbalance of power that's mostly felt in your solar plexus. And the first thing you notice is it impacts your breathing and your breath. So if you think back to a time where you were upset or frustrated, or you're in a power struggle with someone and you're holding your breath or you're panting, right? So the access through that is to breathe consciously when you're finding yourself in that situation. The emotional consequences of a loss of sovereignty includes codependency. And codependency in this definition is that imbalance within yourself of pleasing another at the expense of yourself while feeling like you don't have any other choices available. It's also depression, addiction, suppressed anger, living in fear, and ignoring your instincts. The spiritual practice that addresses this loss of power is actually connection. Being a part of a community gives you practice in creating and maintaining healthy boundaries. Because think about it like this. You don't know where your boundaries are sometimes until somebody crosses them. Right? Then you can say, whoa, wait a minute, that's a little bit too far. And you get that in community. You get that in family, obviously, right? Then you have to summon the courage and the inner strength to give voice to those boundaries. Conscious breathing is another tool to combat the perceived loss of power and sovereignty. And when you get hip to the compromised breathing pattern, place your hand over your solar plexus and breathe slowly and deeply until you feel calm and centered again. And this is something you can do subtly, in any moment, just bringing your awareness to that place to restore your power. Laughter is another tonic for restoring a loss of power, as well as recognizing that no matter what the circumstance looks like, you have choice. You have choice. You always have a choice. Even if, Eli Wiesel talked about it, even in the face of, any circumstance, even imprisonment, you still have choice. So this leaves us with the ultimate tool in living with divine order, and that's surrendering yourself, surrendering to God, surrendering to a power greater than yourself, a God of your understanding and your being. Indeed, the highest form of personal power is taking your own limited power as a human being and surrendering it to God and asking the universe to direct your course. Sure, you will always have a part to play. I'm not talking about sitting around hoping and a wishing and a praying for something to change and not doing anything, but asking the Holy Spirit, like A Course in Miracles says, where should I go? What shall I do? What should I say? And to whom? And then following through with that. It's not easy, and I won't stand here and tell you that it's easy, but living under the direction of a higher power requires you to suspend your need for guarantees. There are no guarantees. You are going to white knuckle it sometimes. But it requires a deliberate leap of faith. You're acknowledging that the limits of your personal control, you're acknowledging the limits of your personal control over your own life circumstances and those of others. It's ultimately a heart-centered exercise, and when you direct your will fully toward what lies within your heart, the universe will meet you halfway. So you have to get as far as you can go, and when you hit that wall, you know that the universe will meet you halfway when you've done all that you can do. So this month we're talking about prosperity. And what that entails is usually a financial component that people talk about. But what sometimes gets stepped over is the actual richness and prosperity that comes from being connected with like-minded individuals who share common values in a community such as this. This community is a gift because we are small and mighty, and your contribution matters. It makes a difference, whether that's your time, your talent, or your treasures, okay? So that little bit really does go a long way. So when we say that love is our religion and care is our currency, that's a verb. That's an action, okay? And it's the very actions and intentions that inform and direct what we create here together. Thank you.
So what do you think? I would love to hear from you. Leave a comment below, or you can go ahead and sign up for our newsletter at speakeasyspiritualcommunity.com so we can keep the conversation going. Because Speakeasy is all about engaging in engaging conversations. Everything is better when we all share our voice. I'm Maureen Muldoon, your spiritual vixen, reminding you to love more and fear less, and don't forget to laugh. What do you say?